good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Corporate Jet Investor Town Hall. This is a particularly global one. In the next 60 minutes, we're going to go around the world and we're going to see everyone. Absolutely delighted to have this town hall sponsored by Mesinger Jet Services. And as always, we're delighted to have Jay Mesinger join us. Jay, how are you?
Great. Happy New Year, everybody. This is it's a terrific group that's here with us today, and it's such an important topic. And it's nice to cross our borders and take this tour around the world. I've got my passport ready to be stamped. Let's go.
I know, and we go everywhere. I think today might be the last day you're allowed to say Happy New Year to anyone.
I think you can say it till you've not said it.
Okay. Yeah, if you haven't said it to someone. Well, let's start in the probably the most exciting single country market for growth. Let's go to Saudi Arabia. There's a lot going on there, and we're delighted to have Yosef join us. Yosef Hafiz has been with NASJET for more than 20 years, but he also graduated from Pedro in America. Yosef, how are you?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you, Al. And thank you for having me with you. Exciting times in aviation in Saudi Arabia, to be honest with you. And, so many changes going on since the past 7 or 8 years. We've seen so many positive changes, whether it's in the country itself or in aviation, whether it's commercial aviation or private business aviation, general aviation. A lot of opportunities coming up for foreign investors, a lot of new companies popping up left and right, all different directions, whether it's ground handling, maintenance, operators, if you will, charter companies, you name it. It's just a lot of positive changes, a lot of new projects. The doors are open for business in Saudi Arabia. So very exciting times here.
If I could ask a question, we sit in the confines of our North America or United States, and we say, well, all the business is really here. And as we bring airplanes for sale and they're based here, and the owners say, well, where in the world will they sell? And we used to not talk about Saudi Arabia. We talked about the Middle East, of course, but it's exciting now to have another landing spot and to be able to discuss with our clients an opportunity to broaden their market space and have another place to sell. Is it complicated getting an airplane in there? And are the processes difficult?
That's a very good question, Jay. I think the local authorities here, which basically similar to the FAA in the US or EASA in Europe, we have the General Authority of Civil Aviation, or for short, GACA or GACA here in Saudi Arabia. They have opened the doors up to multiple registrations when it comes to operations in Saudi Arabia. So I'll give you an example. At NASJET, we operate 5 different registries on our AOC in Saudi Arabia. So we basically operate US registered aircraft, Cayman registered aircraft, Aruba registered aircraft. We've operated San Marino in the past, and maybe a few are Hotel Zulu, which is the local Saudi registration. So it makes doing business in Saudi Arabia a lot easier, because the banks, the way they look at it, because a lot of the ultra high net worth individuals here in Saudi, they finance their aircraft, even though they can afford to maybe outright pay cash for them. But they go ahead and finance anyways, through UBS Bank or through Deutsche Bank, just to name a few, maybe. And the banks like it that the authorities here give them the opportunity to register on different registries, just to give them that extra security. So selling aircraft here in our part of the world is very straightforward, just like you would do it anywhere else in the world.
Great. And are there any restrictions? Is there an age restriction? Do you not want to bring an airplane in over a certain age?
That's a very good question. I'll give you some live examples. We operate aircraft, U.S. registered aircraft, in fact, that are more than 20 years old. No issues with that whatsoever. When it comes to U.S. registries, you have to have if you're going to operate for hire, meaning under, let's say, a charter configuration, you have to have a 129.14 with the FAA, which basically is operating a U.S. aircraft registered in the U.S. on a foreign operator certificate for hire, whether it's in the commercial aviation side or the business aviation side. So, they open the doors to any type of aircraft. We also operate a Twin Otter that's probably our smallest make and model that's over 40 years old in the kingdom here. So there's really no restrictions on age.
And take a minute and talk about the key points of the Saudi Vision 2030. How does this all fit in there?
That's a very good point, Jane. Thank you for bringing that up. Saudi Vision 2030. What is this vision about? People hear about it all the time. Well, what does it envisage? What is it about? And I'll maybe simplify the process for you, and for everyone attending. Saudi Vision 2030 is basically there to rely less on oil and gas, to diversify the economy, to allow private companies to take off in the right direction and rely on themselves, to allow for foreign investors to come into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and obtain trade licenses, if you will, or company registrations on their own without the need to have a local investor attached to them. This is something that wasn't there in the past. They've opened up the doors to tourism. We've already exceeded our targets for 2030 when it comes to tourism. The mega projects that we see here in Saudi Arabia, whether it's NEOM or the Red Sea project, if you will, or there's a very large amusement park that they're building south of Riyadh, about 50 kilometers south of Riyadh, that's going to be 4 times the size of Disneyland. You can imagine, or Disney World, if you will, not even Disneyland. So, there's just so many ways to diversify the economy. Just taking a step back of the changes that have happened over the past 7 or 8 years. There's so much to talk about. They've allowed women to drive, which we knew was going to come eventually. That was a positive step forward. They've given more rights to women than they've ever had before. And the workforce is just amazing. The women probably envisage maybe now 30 or 40% of the workforce. And it's wonderful. They're hard workers. They're dedicated people. So this is what we call diversification. One thing that's interesting, Jay, that the audience probably would love to hear as well, is that 50% of the population in Saudi Arabia are below the age of 30. And which shows you that it's such a dynamic environment here, that everybody is aligned with the Vision 2030. Everybody knows where we're going, and things are happening, faster than we can imagine.
So it must be exciting to think that you're retaining, or are you retaining, that future workforce of that young age, that 50% of your population, because that's the future. That's where your pilots will come from, your maintenance techs.
That's
your
true.
Teachers, your business executive,
True.
or is Saudi Arabia retaining that group?
Yeah, and I think what we see with the young generation is that they are learning. They're quick to learn. They're quick to grasp new ideas. Now, not only the workforce here, I mean, obviously they're focused on employing Saudis, but they also employ non-Saudis because we need the expertise. We need people with experience. We need people with know-how that have done this maybe before, or have come to doing something similar to this, if you will, when it comes to the mega projects like the Red Sea project, NEOM, and Qiddiya, which is the amusement park that's south of Riyadh. And I think what we see today is that the young population is hungry. They're willing to learn, they're willing to listen, and they're willing to grow. And eventually, down the road, we'll see this as they get more experience, as they gain more knowledge. Eventually, we'll see them, taking on quite good positions within, prominent companies and so on, and moving forward.
And by the way, let me just say that throughout the course of this morning's or today's presentation, if anybody has a question, please don't think you need to wait till the end of the presentation to ask it. if it's topical to what we're talking about, please ask, and Al will be sure we say. But let's talk about airplanes. Where do you source your planes? Are the OEMs coming to town? Are they bringing planes? Are they showing on the ground there? How do you get to see them?
Yeah, and I think, again, excellent questions. And, I really like it that I didn't have a set of these questions just to let the audience know before this town hall meeting. So everything is happening live. Everything is, which is wonderful. That's the way I like it, by the way. So great questions. I'm really amazed at you're spot on when it comes to asking the right questions. Now, when it comes to OEMs, all of them are in town. We constantly get visits from Gulfstream, Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier, if you will, Embraer in particular, Cessna, if you will, or Textron, and so on. You name it. Even Pilatus has come put some aircraft here in the region. So we are the first to operate a PC-24 in Saudi Arabia and in the region. So when it comes to manufacturers, yes, they are coming to Saudi. We just finished, similar to the US, where you have your MBAA in October, I believe, your EBAA in Europe. We have MEBA, Middle East Business Aviation Association show that happens every other year, if you will, in Dubai. We saw a very strong presence, if you will, of OEMs at the event, displaying their aircraft in full force. And a lot of brokers in the region are here. They know that the industry is ready to move and take a step in the right direction. So, we're seeing a lot of improvements. So a lot of newcomers to the market too.
And how about the opportunity for Saudi Arabia to launch international jet operators like VistaJet? What's on the horizon?
Again, great question. I know that VistaJet has been trying to get their foot in the door over here. They're just to let you know, they're in and out. So they do a lot of business in and out of Saudi Arabia when it comes to bringing passengers from an international destination into Saudi, or picking up passengers from Saudi to an international destination outside of Saudi Arabia. Now, what they can't do so far, and we know this, is cabotage. Cabotage is when you fly D to D, domestic to domestic. That's not yet available. So, as far as business-wise, I would say, because we don't have enough aircraft here in Saudi to meet the charter demand, the international operators are certainly picking up on a lot of that business, and VistaJet is one of them for sure. We ourselves, we charter with VistaJet when we need aircraft, or when some of our clients ask for particular airplanes.
What do you want to tell us? What do you want us in this global webinar to know as we leave Saudi Arabia in this meeting?
I think, if we can take home one piece of information about Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia is open for business. Saudi Arabia welcomes international investors. Being here for the past 20 years, I've seen that when we have people come in, the local culture is very welcoming of those people who come in and want to do business in Saudi Arabia. So the doors are open for business. Let's put it that way.
Al?
That was amazing timing. Emmanuel Ferreira is saying, do you still require local representation to open a company within, and he said GACAB, I think within Saudi. We ran into this issue not long ago.
Yeah, and the short answer is no. You can come in as a foreign investor and get a trade license directly in Saudi.
And I guess that's one of the. So GACA, the Civil Aviation Authority, has this general aviation plan, and actually in that they actually state they are keen for foreign MROs and FBOs to come into the kingdom, don't they, Yosef?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, if you look at some of the targets, they have a roadmap produced recently by the General Authority of Civil Aviation They plan to build 6 dedicated general aviation airports. So that's something we haven't had. That's something that's a given in the US, if you will. Wherever you fly to, you have a GA airport to fly into. We don't have that privilege in Saudi. We have to fly into the major airports. We're stuck with all the commercial aircraft. So, I mean, that's a big step forward. If I look at some of the statistics, not only that, it's 9 dedicated GA terminals. So opportunities for a lot of handlers to come in, FBOs, if you will. The other part is they're trying to see how general aviation is going to contribute to the economy. And one of the targets is by 2030 is to have about 7.8 million Saudi riyals, divide that by 4, billion Saudi riyals, divide that by 4 roughly, so around $2 billion of contribution to the GDP by 2030. So again, there's just so much to do and so much in such a short period of time. We only have 5 years left, believe it or not.
I can't think of any other country in the world that's looking to add 6 business aviation only airports. I don't know if anyone else can. And also, breaking news, GACA has just highlighted its numbers, and it's 24% increase in business aviation flights in 2024. That came out yesterday.
I agree.
That's brilliant, Yosef. Thank you so much. Oh, we've got another question. I think this is Eric Strickland is going, are you traveling much to the US anymore?
I do, maybe once a year, and I look forward to seeing you, Eric, hopefully when I come in next time. So.
I'm sorry, another great question from Emmanuel Farias. What I love is that Yosef often speaks at the CJI Dubai conference, and I always think that he's 50% business aviation person, 50% ambassador for Saudi, and also he can be very polite. It's amazing. But we've got a nice question from Emmanuel again, saying, "Do you have any recommendations or links for investors looking for further information?"
Yeah, very good question. I'll keep it simple. It's the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia. So MISA for short, MISA. Just look it up, Google it. So Ministry of Investment, and there'll be links on how to, and roadmaps on how to invest as a foreign investor. So
brilliant, Yosef. That was a fantastic start, and always great to see you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jay, as well.
Right, we're now going to. Jay, are you excited about Saudi?
I've got to check, and I guess I've got to go get a visa, right?
It's easy apparently now to get one. It's online. Apparently, it's a lot easier than it ever was.
Easier than getting to the UK?
Yeah, you now need a visa for an ESTA for the UK. But,
that would be great.
We've had ESTAs for years going to the States. I'm now trying to get, we're just going to try and get Darren, who's just joined us from Asia. Darren Broderick, if we can get Darren up there, Darren's the operator, the founder of Asian Corporate Aviation Management, or ACAM. He spends his time between Singapore and Indonesia and runs the largest fleet in Southeast Asia, but he's also active in Australia, the Middle East and Europe. But Darren, we seem to be having trouble getting Darren up here. We missed a great question. Is there someone asking? Yosef was asking if there's much demand for SAF in the kingdom, and actually Yosef has just answered yes. It's a big part of the equation. There is a lot of SAF information on safinvestor.com, which I'd recommend. If we can't get Darren up while we wait for Darren, let's switch to Europe. Our next speaker needs no introduction. Everyone knows Robert Baltus, Chief Operating Officer. We've just got Darren. Robert, I'm going to drop you and I'm going to come back to you.
Hi, Darren.
Thanks, Robert. That was great. Thanks for joining us. Right. Darren, how are you?
I'm very frustrated out. Sorry about that. It amazes me. I can operate a high-tech aircraft, and yet when it comes to getting onto these types of things, I tend to have a lot of problems. But anyway, sorry. I am in an airport, so it may be a little bit of background noise there as well.
We won't ask which airport because that will give away trade secrets. Right, Jay, over to you.
Thanks, Darren. Good to see you.
Yeah. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
I'm great. Do me a favor, Darren, because we're going to talk about Southeast Asia. Define
Hmm.
Southeast Asia for us.
Well, look, Southeast Asia, it consists basically of, the areas from sort of, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, clearly, the Philippines, and into, Hong Kong. And then, when we talk about, Asia, then we go into, China, mainland China, and then we have Taiwan, and of course, North Asia being Japan and Korea, etc. And then, of course, we can go backwards and also look at India, which is an amazing market. But Asia itself goes, of course, all the way through the Middle East, all the way to the Bosphorus in Turkey. But when we talk about Southeast Asia, we're mainly talking about this area here, which is Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Malaysia, and down Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines.
Huge area you cover. So no wonder you're in an airport. You must be always going somewhere.
Huh. I am, and as Al said, we actually have other stuff also in the Middle East and Europe. So actually, I'm on my way to Europe at this point of time. So, it is a large geographical area. We also cover, of course, Australia and New Zealand. So that's Australasia or Asia Pacific, if you like. So it is a large area.
I asked Yosef the same question that I'll ask you. As we sit in the United States and always used to coach our customers that really all the business is here, so that's all we need to focus on. But that's really changing pretty quickly, and the Southeast Asia area is really picking up in business, and an area that we need to focus on. What are the complications of bringing a plane in there, and what registrations do you recognize?
Sure. Well, look, it depends. It depends what the ultimate use of the aircraft is. If it's going to be a charter aeroplane, then it needs to generally go onto a local register, whichever country that it's intended to be domiciled. There is no sort of free skies in the ASEAN area, so it is very centric to individual countries. For domestic charter, at least. I mean, obviously, we can all do international charter between different countries, but it's the domestic is the issue. In sort of the main theatre that I'm operating in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, then it's I guess non-charter airplanes, unless they're doing international charter, are tending to go on to T7, San Marino, Bermuda, Cayman, Isle of Man. They're all the popular choices in this part of the world. And in some countries, for example, in Singapore, they don't actually have a domestic register for business aviation because every flight is an international flight. So the only Singaporean registered aircraft are Singaporean owned airlines and flight schools. So every single aircraft, business aviation aircraft that's sitting in Singapore, is on a foreign register of some description.
That's great to hear some of those registries that you mentioned, because once a plane is over there and on some of those, it'll be easy to get it back here in its life if it came back here to be purchased and operated here. So it's terrific that we have that reciprocity, if you will, between registries. That's
absolutely,
great.
And that's very true. Of course, I did miss the November register, and there are a lot of FAA aircraft in the Asia Pacific area. It's just I think in the later years, a lot of clients have sort of gone more towards the private registries for the efficiency and so forth. But a lot of clients over the years have had the preference to maintain US registry, because quite often when we're selling an aircraft back into the market, then the US market tends to really like to have something that's always been FAA registered for whatever reason.
How about flight crew and maintenance personnel? What's that like there for you all in terms of hiring and having the support?
Well, look, it's the same as it's a global problem, I guess, in a shortage of good crews for business aviation and technicians. I still am miffed what's happened post COVID, where they've all gone, because prior to COVID, it wasn't really much of an issue to hire people. Personally, we don't have a huge issue. There is a very, very large talent pool in the sort of Asia Pacific region of talented engineers and flight crews. And we run a very, very mixed nationality, multinational crews and technicians coming from all over the world, with probably 30% of them being expatriate, from Western countries, but the rest are nationals from the ASEAN area.
For probably 3 or 4 years, when China was just getting started, I did all of the speaking for NBAA on doing business in China, how to come to China, how to set up FBOs, how to deal with airplanes, how to deal with other ancillary products and services around aviation. What's China like today? Let's just focus on that for a second.
China is really, look. There's still activity. There's still some new sales going in there, the odd pre-owned, but there's more aircraft coming out of China. The market has changed significantly there to the past. Everything, 5 years ago it was China, and it was very, very, very active. But there's been a few changes in policy within China. And some also great changes in China. Many years ago, or not many years ago, until only 6 months ago, we could only operate, for example, 5 sectors of domestic private operations with a foreign registered aircraft before we had to leave the country. That's actually changed now, and there is no restriction. So that's something that's very positive. But I think China as a whole, with the economy, the way things have changed, and as I say, with government policy, with common prosperity, and so forth, I guess people are a little perhaps more apprehensive to go into the business jet side of things, and many of the previous owners have got out of the business now as well. Charter market wise, though, in China, from what I understand from my colleagues, is absolutely booming.
Is ABACE still an active association in the region, and does it now cover all of Southeast Asia?
Well, as BAA, the Asian Business Aviation Association, yes, that's still very active, and that's domiciled out of Hong Kong, but that's looking after the whole of Asia, including my part of Southeast Asia, and they are a very active association. As for ABACE, no, it has been sort of temporarily on hold since COVID, and we haven't had another ABACE as yet. But I understand there are some talks about perhaps an alternate location to the original location, which was always held in Shanghai in China.
So short of having an association that really provides the opportunity for your population to see the airplanes, are the OEMs or the manufacturers supporting you all well in Southeast Asia?
Absolutely. This is probably one of the highest demo areas in the planet for all the OEMs. It's very, very active. Both Bombardier and Gulfstream had very, very good years in this part of the world last year. I'm sure it will continue into this year, as have Dassault and Textron. And I'm not going to forget Embraer, so don't jump up and down at me, guys. But yeah, look, everyone's had a reasonable time here. Some more than others, because the product is a different product. I mean, we're seeing a lot more demand in this part of the world for ultra long range aircraft now. These are the new weapons of choice. And I think it's driven by the convenience of the non-stop, but also a lot of psyche of still post-COVID thinking about going through airports and stuff, the least transits you need. So people are very, very keen on the ultra long range airplanes now. So the G700s are starting, of course, or have been delivering and coming slowly into the region, and also with the global 7500s, very, very popular in this part of the world.
What do you want the audience today to take away from Southeast Asia and what's going on there? How would you like us to rethink or consider the area?
Well, look, it is always a wonderful market, and it's a massive part of the business aviation community in the world, and people don't really realize just how many private jets we do operate and move in this part of the world. It's a vibrant market. It's constantly moving. It'll never be the United States because that's just the bulk of the business there, but it is quite dynamic, and it's an exciting time to be part of the business aviation community here in Southeast Asia. We of course, we have our challenges with different jurisdictions. We have, infrastructure challenges, but, the most of the countries within the region are starting to really recognize business aviation and are starting to address these. And I think the future is really, really bright for business aviation in the region.
Great. Excellent. Al, any questions for Darren?
Yeah, Darren, I've got one for you.
Oh, no.
It's an easy. In the last few years, when I've talked to you quietly, you've been really frustrated with supply chain and parts. Is it getting better?
No. We've just I'm with my colleague now, about to travel, and yeah, we all the way in the car coming out to the airport, we were just going through what we are short of at the moment, and my old favorite windshields. Nothing's ever changed. They're still my favorites, and windshield controllers and so forth. It's really bad. I mean, it's and I don't know. Someone said to me the other day that the OEMs seem to have lost focus on supporting the pre-owned products, and are really focusing on the sales of new, and that's well and good. But I'll give you an example. I have a customer who purchased a certain, I'll call it product X, and he is going to order a new product X, but he knows he has to wait 3 years for it. So he said, well, I'm going to get this one in the interim because it does nearly what I want it to do. And he's stuck on the ground for a windshield, and he said to me, how can they give me confidence to buy the new product X when they can't even support this one? So I think the OEMs really need to concentrate on looking at the pre-owned or the older legacy models, and supporting them as they should. I mean, these things are not 100 years old. They're 10 years old, 15 years old. That's not that long to be out there in the place to say that we're not going to support them anymore.
In the OEM's defense, I think it's their suppliers who are focusing on the newer stuff rather than them.
Well, that's the excuse they give us, but we who knows?
Darren, great team. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Darren.
Likewise, Al. Thanks, Jay. Pleasure. Thanks. Absolute pleasure.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Who's up next, Al?
Well, he doesn't need any introduction because he's already had one. So let's get Robert back. Robert Baltus, COO of the European Business Aviation Association. But before that, he worked at Qatar Executive. He worked at NASJET. Everyone knows you, Robert, and we're going to keep you on now.
Right, thank you. Well, you put me in a tough spot after first Yosef, who is a great ambassador and had a really good story. Darren was also excellent, but I was glad you asked the question about parts, because that was otherwise one I would raise. But there you go.
But you're going to keep us as upbeat and cheery now, talking about Europe.
I'll do my best, Al.
Well, that's a great intro, Al. Hey, Robert, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it a lot. How is the mood in Europe? I mean, you've got mood swings in Europe like we've got in the United States right now.
Yeah, I think if you look overall, I think the market is relatively flat. If you look at last year versus this year, it's like -1% or something, and some markets a little bit better, some a bit less. I think everybody is watching the market. As an industry, we tend to follow the GDP, and you see in Europe, and there's not one Europe. Some countries do better than the others. There is, I wouldn't call it stagnation, but it's fairly flat, and I think it's a combination of accumulation of cost, availability of aircraft, but also I think people are trying to see how the market, is developing in the next few months or years.
You have in Europe, you were the predecessor of where great business aviation took place, way ahead of Saudi Arabia or the Middle East or Southeast Asia, and so I'm sorry to hear that it's flat, but I think it's something you can count on, and I bet it comes back. I saw in October you all had EBAA had a press conference where you said eBase will be back in 2025,
Yep.
and that is so exciting. And I want to remind all of us here in the United States to pay our EBAA dues because we need you over there. And as you grow and as you turn that eBase around, the show around, and keep it moving forward, we need to be a healthy part of that.
Yep.
What are some of the plans for 2025, but more so 2026 and 27?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you raised this, Jay, because it is very important to have a platform by the industry for the industry, and that's what we are. It's a lot of people never realized that it was both the NBAA and the EBAA organizing it, where the NBAA took a fair share of or the biggest share of the organization bit, and we've said, okay, now we'll do our bit on our side. But it is really important in a market which is also, there's a lot of things happening to our industry, which is all politically driven. And so we need to have a great counterforce, which we as an association, together with the national associations, are trying to organize. And eBase is a great platform for people to network, to look at new airplanes, to see the latest parts and things like that. So what we're trying to do is, I think 2025 is going to be a year of transition. And as you rightly say, where do we want to be at 26, 27? We really are talking to everybody in the industry, OEMs. What do they really want to get out of the show? Like Yosef was referring to at MEBA, what did he like at MEBA and why? And bring the best things together. Would love to compete with Al, but I think with CJI London, but we won't. But you know what I mean? It's bring the best of the industry together and give people who attend the highest return on investment for attending. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of people who have ideas and opinions about eBase, and it is on us now to bring it all together and then hopefully have a continuation of the best and the biggest show in Europe.
And of course, those people that have the ideas need to sort of put their money where their mouth is and be sure to attend, be sure to support, be sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't just do it from behind it.
No,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. Well, are you finding, as these other regions are, that the OEMs, though with wondering about eBase, are still supporting you in between and your customers?
Well, for them, it's obviously a great place to meet the customers, and it's always the question is the show there to see the final customers or not? And the most important thing is, and I'm always teasing the OEMs. I said, who's selling your aeroplanes? And they all say, oh, my sales team. I said, no, actually, it's the J Messengers of this world. It's the other consultants. It's the lawyers. It is your chief pilots. And there's a huge group of people, family officers. They are the people who need to be aware of the latest what is happening. And so it is a great combination that we can help the OEMs and the OEM helps us. So
great. And I'm sure, listen, since the pandemic, everybody has had to change a bit how they get their product in front of their customer. And I do admire the OEMs. They used to be able to go to a couple of places in the world and do that. Now they've really got to go to the home base of the
Yep.
customer and the representative. So their challenge is greater than ever before. I understand that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's good to hear if I hear Yusuf and Darren on the interactions and the activities on that are ongoing and making sure that they can sell the airplanes. That is really good. And I, like I said earlier, the only thing is parts, and stuff.
Right. So are you seeing that charter and fractional are big components in your market space?
Yeah, we see that the branded programs are doing really well. So, and they literally have contractually a captured audience. So, but they've been doing well through the pandemic. So the number of new aircraft entering in Europe, there's a large component is on branded programs, and they're really active on gaining as much market share as they can. With charter being reliant generally on aircraft that are owned with private owners, etc., we see some other movements, but percentage-wise, there's not a huge difference between the two markets of where the market is heading.
Do you see, as EBAA looks at its fleet there in Europe, do you see that it's diminishing because planes are leaving Europe for other places, or are they just transitioning within Europe?
Yeah, historically, there's always been a large move of aircraft going back to the US, and new aircraft coming in. There are some markets which lost airplanes in the last few years. The UK was being a prime example because of the Brexit, but the aircraft didn't leave Europe, so they still stayed around but went to different registers. Apart from that, it is fairly stable. And like I said, the US is the main market where the aircraft move to.
Great. What do you want us to take away from our visit today?
Well, I think the most important thing is that there's a lot of things from a regulatory perspective, a tax perspective, etc., happening in Europe. And I'll just briefly take you through a few of them. That specifically the non-European operators are also aware of it, as well as maybe some European operators who didn't pay attention. But UK, two major things happening there is the electronic travel authorization is needed. It's a bit like ESTA, so the first time you do it, it's a bit annoying. But more important is the air passenger duty. Now, the BBGA in the UK is doing an excellent job in trying to push back on it, because this is, again, it's a political tax more than anything else. But the ETA, watch out for that. In France, we have a new aviation tax in the works. EBAA France is working hard on that. But the most important thing for bigger operators, so if you do more than 500 flights into what the European Union defines as union airports, you have to follow what I call anti-tankering regulation. I was about to say a bad word, but it's the most stupid regulation we've seen. The intention is great. It's that, to increase the SAF uptake. We're fully behind that. But they've come up with a way of administrating it that is a burden on the operators. So talk to your flight planning companies. If you're from outside Europe, if you're in Europe, obviously, talk to your authorities. It's a big thing that really will make their life more difficult. On the fun side, fun like this there is a big thing on taxonomy in Europe, which will hurt people who want to buy new airplanes if they would like to finance it. Dassault has been actively working on starting a court case, and we are supporting them to make sure that the only thing we ask is appropriate regulation, and that's our day job. And these are the ones where I would like to highlight. These are the ones we really need to look at. So if from outside Europe, keep an eye out on our website, and otherwise, feel free to contact us.
Last question. We've seen the protesters painting jets and coming to business aviation events. Are they having any impact on policy?
Yeah, I think it's the loudest people tend to get the most attention. And if you would do a poll about aviation in general versus what the protesters are shouting, there's a huge disparity. But unfortunately, politicians tend to follow the signals, they call it the signals they get from society. And so we see a lot of well-intended but misguided regulations pop up, like the UK passenger duty, and you have something similar in Portugal, etc., etc. If you do it and it really makes the world better, EA greener, EA less carbon, fine. But as a consequence of these protesters, you see a lot of politicians just trying to look green without properly addressing the issue.
Right. All right. Any questions, Al?
I've just got one. Are you worried that EBAA may lose Greenland from its territory?
Yeah, I think if as a diversion airport, it might have some passport implications, etc. So we're watching it with a lot of attention.
And it's to be fair, Greenland is actually quite a popular destination for anyone flying over turboprops, and there's probably more people on this call who've been to Greenland than you would normally get in the population. Do you want to? We've got a question from Maxime George saying, any comment on OEMs attending EBACE this year?
Yeah, it's the right question to ask. We're talking to all the OEMs because we want to make sure for them it's a huge investment. If you think about it, it's the airplanes are on the ground, it's all the staff, it's the location, etc., etc. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a package which is really tailor-made for them. We started 2 weeks ago actively on the sales, so it's around Christmas time. And we still haven't finalized it because the packages are still being discussed as we speak. So the answer is, yes, it's a touchy subject, absolutely, but we haven't finalized anything as yet.
Cool. Thanks, Robert. Always great seeing you.
All right. And see you in February.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you soon. See you in London. Right. Last but definitely not least, we're absolutely delighted now to go to Brazil. Which is one of the most exciting markets. It's one of the most mature business aviation markets. It's one of the most exciting. It's got its beat of its own. We're absolutely delighted to have Pedro Ferreira from head of aviation at Timbro Trading. Timbro is one of the companies that specializes in importing aircraft. It's one of the trading houses that specializes in importing aircraft. And I think Timbro is the biggest export of coffee from Brazil as well. If anyone's looking for coffee, Pedro's your guy. And before that, he also worked at NASJET and Leader. Jay, do you do much in Brazil, Jay?
We have in the past, and then it died down. But now there's just more and more talk, more and more conversation from there. I think that they're working on some of their tax simplification issues. Can you talk about that, Pedro? Mic's not on.
No, mic's on.
There you go.
Hear me?
Perfect.
Now, can you hear me, Jay?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here. Glad to be talking to you guys here a little bit about Brazil. And we are being very active here. Last year, we have around 500 aircraft coming into Brazil, all kinds of aircraft, fixed wings, helicopters, agricultures, and Timbro was able to import 20% of that amount. So, yes, we are a complex country. We made it simple. That's our what we say. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of activity still going on here in Brazil. We have secured like 7 new operations for this year. And we see the market changing. Of course, São Paulo is the main market, but we see activity in all over Brazil. So the north part of Brazil is very active, northeast, and the money is changing hands. So we see new operators, concept buyers buying aircraft. So yeah, it's very activity going on. You should come to Brazil, Jay, again.
Yes, well, yes, absolutely. And you know, another big segment of your market are turboprops. So it's not just
Yeah.
a jet market; it's a very active turboprop market, correct?
Yeah, turboprops, we are agriculture country mainly. So the farmers and people from the agribusiness, they use a lot to go from one farm to another. So if you go to the Middle West of Brazil, Mato Grosso do Sul is the turboprop country. We are about to have like 800 King Airs here in Brazil, our total fleet, which is massive. But not only turboprops, but we see a lot of activity. These people, they have the turboprops for work and jets for leisure or to leave their states to come to São Paulo, into the southeast where the banks and the main cities are. So one thing links to another. So turboprops very active, like I said, almost 800 King Airs, the total fleet here in Brazil, but lots of jets and helicopters as well, especially here in São Paulo.
You know, I know Timbro is a big entity there in Brazil and deals with a lot of different facets of helping the buyer get a plane in. Take a second and talk about Timbro and some of the focuses that you have.
Yeah, well, Timbro is a trading company. So we have the export side. So we export lots of sugar, lots of coffee, like El said, and lots of minerals, iron ore, and but we have the import side as well. I take care of the aviation department. I used to sell jets before at Leader and Synerjet. So we have specialized people like me who knows the market, knows how the deals are made. So we know what the buyer need and what you guys that are selling know. So we know both sides of the table, and we can make it easy for both sides. So sometimes I know that brokers from Europe or US have some concerns to sell from Brazil because of the complexity, the taxes, all the issues that we have here. But like I said before, we can make it easier and we make it smooth for everyone. So last year we had operations from New Zealand, we had operations from Asia, from Singapore, lots from Europe, and US, of course, is the main market that aircrafts come from Brazil. But we can make deals happen from all over the world with all kinds of brokers, dealers, OEMs. We know you guys very well, so we are here to support.
Do you have restrictions on in-registered airplanes being owned and operated in the country?
Yeah, if you are going to operate an aircraft here in Brazil, it must have the Brazilian tail. You cannot operate anymore with in registration or the registration. So this is one of the things that we support buyers, especially the concept buyers that don't know quite well how the market works, and avoid the issues with the Brazilian authorities.
And do you have to have Brazilian staff as flight crew?
Yes, it cannot be, doesn't need to be Brazilian, but it has to be the ANAC, which is the Brazilian FAA, let's say, certification. So we can be a foreign, it can be an American or whatever, but it must have the license, the Brazilian license to operate here. If the aircraft is it has Brazilian tail.
Okay. And
Okay.
what would you like the takeaway from today's visit be to those people that are watching?
Well, Jay, I think Brazil is doing so well. We are increasing a lot, so we don't see many markets like Brazil nowadays. So I think it's a good time to come to Brazil, take a look to Brazil, see what's going on here. We have two shows going to soon. It's Catarina in a very nice general aviation airport close to São Paulo, and then we have La Base. So I think it would be good if you want to do some business deals with Brazil, come to Brazil in one of those shows, or if you don't have agenda, because I know one is August, summer in the North Hemisphere, you guys are on vacation, but let us know. We are here to support and to show Brazil and the opportunities that are here. So a lot of opportunities going on. Don't miss that trend. Okay.
Great. Al?
Pedro, is there one other event that takes place in Sao Paulo that people might want to go to?
Yeah, that's the best one. But CJI São Paulo in April, right?
Yeah.
Last year was a blast, huh?
I also, if you go to Sao Paulo, you also have to visit the Timbro offices because they are absolutely amazing. And when I say amazing, they've even got an outdoor bar area.
Yeah, we are here. That's Faria Lima.
Beautiful.
It's definitely worth visiting.
You guys are more than welcome to come over. Okay.
And Pedro, is it going to be a better year this year than last year for Brazilian business aviation? And last year was a great year.
Last year was a great year, and I think if we can make the same like we did last year, it's going to be very good. Like I told on the beginning of my speech, we had an amazing week last week. So if we go on that trend, it would be better. But if it's like last year, it's going to be great.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pedro. It's always great seeing you. See you soon. See you in a few weeks.
Thanks for the opportunity. See you guys soon.
Thank you.
Al, that was pretty good.
That was excellent, Jay. We've been around the world. I've got a question for you. Which country are you going to first?
Well, of course, UK. But then, actually, we're going to Brazil and Argentina the end of February. So we're stacking them up. We're going to take that world tour.
It's great. And very quickly, what do we expect from the US in the next few months?
I think you're going to find a euphoria over the next few months that will last and demonstrate itself with the high amount of activity here in the States. I'm hopeful that the euphoria can last. We take it one day at a time. Right now, we're seeing a lot of activity here in the States, and that's going to translate into real transactions. So I think that the first half of this year, if certainly the first quarter of this year, should be very good. We should know soon about whether or not the bonus depreciation will be reinstituted for the 100%. And of course, that boosts our fourth quarter. So we'll look at the second and third quarter as the areas that'll be the most could be interesting. You know, if you set your calendar a week from yesterday, January 20th is Inauguration Day. It'll be really interesting to see what happens on that day and the next day. And then, of course, May 1st will be the countdown for the first 100 days of this administration. So I think the United States has got a lot to look forward to and a lot to pay attention to.
Brilliant. And I think, hopefully everyone watching this has also seen how exciting their opportunities are in the rest of the world. Some really great speakers. Thanks so much to Yosef Hafiz from NASJET, Darren Broderick from ACAM, Robert Baltus from EBAA, and Pedro Ferreira from Timbro Trading. Jay, thanks so much to you, and thanks to everyone watching us. And from all of us, good morning, good evening, good night.
Everybody, thanks and Happy New Year. That's the last time I'll say it.
Bye.